Hello everyone, welcome back. Welcome back. It's the middle of the year. How are we already halfway through? I have no idea, but as you guys can see by the title and the thumbnail of this video, we are talking our halfway reading challenge. How far have we made it so far? How close are we to finishing our goal? How many books have we read? What's our average rating? What's our most read genre? There's so many books that we are about to go through, and I am just going to put books up in editing. I'm not going to grab all of these books because at this point in the year, I have read approximately 33 books. Now, I say approximately because I don't always log the books that I'm reading, because if I'm doing a reread, I don't always log it, but sometimes I do. Sometimes it happens by accident because I start reading it on my Kindle. So there are some books that I have not logged, some books that I have logged, so approximately 33 books that I have read so far this year. So let's talk about them. Okay, so Fable says that I am a passionate romantic. I've been reading fiery romances and complex love tales. I gravitate towards love stories that defy expectations. That sounds about right. So Fable says I have finished 28 books, but Goodreads says that I have finished 33. So once again, it's approximate. I really genuinely, I don't even know. I'm gonna have to go through and look through all of my apps and make sure that I've logged everything at this point. But let's see what my reading insights are. So obviously my most read genre is romance. I have read a total of 20 romance books. I have read a total of 8 fantasy books, 5 fiction books, 4 historical fiction, and 4 literary fictions. And my average rating is a 4.6 star. That's not bad. I'm having a pretty good reading year. So far. I mean, a 4.6 average rating already in June. I mean, hey, that's a pretty good reading year for me. Okay, and my most read authors so far this year are Alex Astor with 2 books because, yeah, girl is making her way up on my favorite authors list. I am quite literally obsessed with everything that I've read by her so far. I have read 2 Allie Hazelwood books so far this year, 2 Emily Henry books so far this year, 2 Jessa Hastings books, and 2 Rebecca Yarros books. So let's go to Goodreads and see what is up over there. Because you guys, this is about to get really interesting. All right, let's talk about the books that I have read so far this year. Yeah, and like I said, Goodreads says I have read 33 books this year. So anyway, let's go down all the way to the very first book that I have read this year. And the very first book that I read this year just so happened to be Iron Flame, which I obviously rated a 5-star. Me and my sister-in-laws like to reread before we start a new book that comes out in the series, so we were all rereading at the time. So Iron Flame was my first read of the year. I usually don't like to log rereads because I feel like it's not really fair, but at the same time, I'm taking the time out of my day to read, so I might as well log them. The second book that I have read this year was Frigid. We rated Frigid a 5 stars. I enjoyed this book a lot. It was very spicy, you guys. It was very spicy. This was one of the books that you kind of have to turn off the literary machine and just kind of enjoy a book, if that makes sense. Because, yeah, plot was awesome, but it was very much so overshadowed by the amount of smut, right? Okay. The third book that I read this year was Funny Story by Emily Henry. I loved this book. I got that book for Christmas. I also rated it a 5-star. I enjoyed that book so much. I really feel like that was such a complex story that like, what did I even read in that book? You know what I mean? Like, it was insane. It was so cute. And I loved our characters. I loved our characters. I loved them so much. The next book that I read this year was The Kite Runner, which I have said this multiple times in so many videos, but I always rate banned books 5 stars because they're just a little bit too real for me to consider them as a fiction. So I don't like to rate nonfictions and biographies. I just don't rate them. So whenever I'm reading a banned book, I am going to be rating it a 5-star because it's too real not to. But the next book after that was Onyx Storm. You guys, I'm still not over it. I'm still not over it. And Alex Warren is coming out with like an entire album basically, and some of his songs are coming up on my TikTok, and very much so Violet and Zayden coded. So I'm still not over this book, but we rated Onyx Storm a 5-star. I loved it. I hated it. I wanted to throw it across the room, but I also like genuinely could have snuggled that thing to sleep. Like, I just don't even know how to explain it. The next book I read was The Empress's Tomb. I rated that a 3.25. It was a bit too juvenile for me. It was an interesting book nonetheless, but it was just a bit too juvenile for me. Overall, though, it was a really cute book. I would recommend it to young readers for sure. Might not recommend it for older readers because it was just a little bit too juvenile. The next book I read after that was The Idea of You, and I rated that a 3.75. I went back and watched the movie after I finished it, and I think that I very much so enjoyed the movie more than the book, but I think that the reason that is the way that it is because of the way that the movie ended versus the way that the book ended. The book ended really abruptly, in my opinion, so I just really did not, I couldn't give this a 4 stars, you guys. I was very frustrated with the way that the book ended, and the movie was so beautifully done. The next book I read was Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. I ended up rating that a 5-star. I loved it. I loved it, loved it, loved it. Rue and Eli are seriously some of the cutest Ali Hazelwood couples that I have ever read. I am obsessed with their story. I'm obsessed with Eli. Eli is such a sweet, gentle giant. I love him so much. Also, this book was super spicy. Like, very much so not in the same realm of past Ali Hazelwood books. This one was definitely more on the erotic side, but it was enjoyable. The next book that I read was Arm Candy. I rated that a 3.75. I enjoyed this book, but I also really hated our characters. The plot of the book was really interesting. I liked the plot of the book, but what the heck? I think a squirrel just, I don't know. Sorry, I was distracted. Anyway, I loved the plot of the story, but our characters, specifically our FMC, she was really annoying. And I can't even give her like the excuse of her being complex. Like, she was just really annoying. She never grew, and she was the only character in this book that didn't grow. And like, she's our main character. So I was just a little bit frustrated. So 3.75 for Arm Candy. The next book that I read this year was Runaway Love by Melanie Harlow. I rated that a 5-star. It was a single dad and nanny. So single dad and nanny tropes. I mean, I love a single dad trope. Love a single dad trope, especially whenever our FMCs or the girls that are coming into the lives of these children, sometimes they are so funny and it really just captures me in so quickly, and that is exactly what happened with this book. I loved it so much. The next book that I read was The Color Purple. Once again, I always rate banned books 5 stars, so that was a 5-star for me. And here is where things start to get a little bit messy, because sometimes things were logged and sometimes things were not. But the next book that I read this year was ACOTAR, the first one. I obviously rated it a 5-star. It will never be anything but a 5-star. I loved this series. This series will always be a 5-star series for me. But yeah, reread that this year, and somehow those ones both got logged on both apps. So look at me go. The next book that I read this year was Animal Farm by George Orwell. I actually listened to this book, but it was also a 5-star. And I did not have it logged on Fable. So the next book that I read was, yeah, this is where it's starting to get very sticky because some things are logged and some things are not. So then I listened to I Know Your Secret by Daphne Benedis Grab. I don't really remember what I rated this book. I think it was low. Yeah, it was a 3-star. I rated I Know Your Secret a 3-star. It wasn't a bad book. It was just, once again, pretty juvenile for me. And then the next book that I read was Demon Copperhead. I cannot express to you the feelings that that book gave me. It was a 5-star. I loved reading about Appalachia in a book that was so eloquently written, but I also hated reading about Appalachia in a book that was so eloquently written, because Appalachia has become the opioid crisis face. Like, we are the face of the opioid crisis, so I really do hate what happened to Appalachia, but it was a beautiful book nonetheless. It was a 5-star for me. The next book I read was the Book of Scandal, which I ended up rating a 3-star. It was not a bad book, but it could have been so much shorter. So much shorter. I felt like the book just dragged on. It was very repetitive, and I couldn't get over that. Then the next book that I read was The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I rated that a 5-star, a 6-star if I could. That book really took me by surprise, the way that my brain just, I was obsessed with everything in that book. And then the next was Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. That was a 4-star for me. Then I read Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. It was a 5-star. Then it was Lightlark, you guys. There was an entire video on Lightlark. It was a 5-star for me as well. Then Emma. I rated Emma a 4-star, but the movie was a 5-star. I had talked about this in my Jane Austen series, the first part of my Jane Austen series, so head over to watch that. Then I read The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston, and it was a 5-star. Oh, and this is where my books start to get really, like, I am getting into my favorite books now. Then I read Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings, and it was a 4.75. I have fallen in love with this series. I am obsessed with this series. I am currently reading book 3 of this series. The next book I read was White Hot Kiss by Jennifer L. Armentrout. It was 5 stars. That book was amazing. I was very shocked by it. I wasn't expecting it to be as thought-provoking as it was. So yeah, that book was awesome. Then the next book that I read was Zodiac Academy. I had to soft DNF Zodiac Academy, though. It was just not the book for me at the time. And then we jumped into Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, which was a 5-star. Then we got into the book that I have been so scared to read. And that was Butcher and Blackbird, and we rated Butcher and Blackbird a 4.75. It was such a good book. I loved our main characters. I loved Rowan. I loved Sloane, and I am going to be picking up the second book soon. I am very excited. Then Then the next book I read was Guild by Raven Kennedy. We rated that a 3.75. It wasn't horrible, but it really wasn't my favorite. I might continue the series later on, but definitely not right now. Then we jumped into Daisy Hates, which is the second book of the Magnolia Park series. We rated Daisy Hates a 4.75. Once again, I love these books, but I cannot give them 5 stars because of how frustrated, and it's just too difficult to explain right now. I love the books, but the way that they are ending is not my favorite. I feel like I could continue reading. There could be extra pages. I feel like they're ending too soon is what I'm saying, but like these books are totally not short books, so I don't know what's going on, but we rated Daisy Hates 4.75. The series altogether so far is a 5-star for me though. Then we read Summer in the City by Alex Astor. It was a 5-star. It was 10 out of 10. I would totally recommend that book to anyone and everyone. It was so cute. It really gave off early 2000s rom-com vibes. I was obsessed with this book. I want to have my mom read it next, actually. Then the next book I read was Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood. We rated that book a 5-star. It was beautiful. It followed Eli and Rue. Well, it followed Eli's little sister, Maya. And the book also, I will say this again, I said this in my previous video, but you do kind of need to read Not in Love before you read Problematic Summer Romance because they are not imperative to be read together, but it made the story go so much smoother since I had read Not in Love first. Then the last book that I have read so far this year was In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle. I gave this book a 5-star. This book was so sad but so beautiful. The plot of this book was insane. I loved it. It was so new. It was something that I hadn't read before, and I felt like Rebecca Searle's writing was really clever because she had us continue to be so disconnected from this specific character, and he was the character that we all of the characters were feeling disconnected from. So I felt like that was really clever writing in the way that she made us feel disconnected from him. So yeah, those were all of the books that I have read so far, give or take, because like I said, some of them have not been logged. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Let me know down in the comments how many books you guys have read this year. What were your favorite books that you've read this year? What are your not so favorite books that you've read this year? If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Make sure you leave a comment downstairs. Make sure you subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.